Greetings, lovers of mysteries and ancient legends. Today, we will dive into the raging world of Poseidon, Lord of the Seas, whose power eclipses even the thunderer Zeus. Or so most people think. But what if I told you that this god, whose name inspires awe, hides secrets that will make you question everything you knew about the Greek gods? Are you ready to learn about his most shameful misdeeds, the rage that shook Olympus, and the cruel revenge that led to the downfall of entire cities? Poseidon is not just a god of storms. He's a tangle of passions, intrigues, and shocking revelations that we will uncover today. From his birth, from his own father's womb, to the battle where he fought on the brink of death, and his most scandalous affairs that shifted mountains and spawned monsters. Prepare yourselves, because the story of Poseidon is much more than just waves and a trident. You will see how a god capable of creating life is also capable of unimaginable destruction. Don't miss a minute. The most exciting part awaits you. In the boundless expanses of Greek mythology, where the powers of the gods seem limitless, and their every action can alter the very fabric of existence, the question of the most powerful god has always sparked heated debate. Many lean towards Poseidon, the Lord of the Seas, but among mythology aficionados, these discussions often escalate into full-blown intellectual battles. Some steadfastly believe in Poseidon's unrivaled strength, placing him alongside the supreme gods of Olympus. Others argue that his martial prowess falls significantly short of the might of Zeus and the wisdom of Athena. Why does Poseidon so often find himself on the losing end of these divine rivalries? Is he merely a god with a loud reputation but scant real power? Or do the grand deeds of his divine legacy conceal a might that surpasses our imagination? Let's delve into the world of Greek myths and explore Poseidon's strength and accomplishments to understand whether he is as turbulent and unpredictable as the sea waves, or whether he possesses an absolute power that surpasses all other gods. Today's tale will transport you to the boundless ocean, where, alongside Poseidon, the god of the seas, we will explore the mysterious blue world. Poseidon, who rules over oceans, storms, and earthquakes, wields immeasurable power, and every wave he commands can rise to monumental heights. Can you imagine him fighting against the heavens and earth amidst the roar of the ocean? In today's story, Poseidon will guide us through his legendary exploits, the enemies he challenged, and the lesser-known heroic deeds he performed. Perhaps you will be amazed by his might or touched by the wisdom hidden behind his actions. Do you yourselves possess the courage and dreams, like Poseidon, to face the vast ocean and bravely set sail? What would you do if you possessed Poseidon's power? Would you rule the seas, change the world? Or perhaps you have a more unique desire? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. We will discuss and interact here, and perhaps in your stories, we will discover a new version of Poseidon. Today, you are not alone under a single sky. In different cities, we will all fall asleep under the story of Poseidon, the god of the sea. On this peaceful night, let's immerse ourselves in the depths of the sea with the power of Poseidon and drift into a sweet slumber under the protection of Gaia, the Mother Earth. Once upon a time, Poseidon and his brothers lived a carefree life. However, this tranquility was cruelly shattered by their father, Cronus. A frightening prophecy hung over Cronus's mind like a dark cloud. Your children will overthrow you. The god of time could not tolerate any threat, So one by one, he swallowed his own children, imprisoning them forever in the cold darkness of his womb. In the darkness, Poseidon could not feel the warmth of the sun and could not hear the roar of the sea. He struggled, raged, but in the face of his father's boundless power, he was powerless to resist. He did not despair. In the silence of the darkness, Poseidon held onto the belief that a moment of change would come and that one day he and his brothers would see the light of day again. Finally, the prophecy came true. The youngest brother, Zeus, managed to escape his fate with the protection of his mother, Rhea, and grew into a mighty god. In a hidden cave, his determination burned like molten lava, and he vowed to rescue his brothers and end his father's tyranny. One day, Zeus, using his wit and courage, earned Cronus's trust, poisoned him, and forced him to regurgitate all the children he had swallowed. Poseidon was reborn from Cronus's womb. When he first opened his eyes, he saw Zeus's unwavering gaze and the protective love of Mother Earth. Anger and gratitude welled up inside him. Gripping his weapon tightly, he vowed to avenge past sufferings. United with his brothers, they began an epic war against their father, the Titanomachy. As Cronus's roar was suppressed by Zeus's cunning tactics, Poseidon was released from the prison of eternal darkness. The moment he was spewed out, his feet touched solid ground. His body was cold but overflowing with power. When he first opened his eyes, he did not see the cruelty of the world, but the resolute eyes of Zeus and the loving gaze of Gaia. At that moment, his heart filled with emotion. Years of imprisonment surged like a tidal wave within him, a mixture of pain, anger, and resentment, all turned into a blazing fire of revenge. He looked at his hands, the same hands that had once been powerless against Cronus's cruelty, now filled with strength. Clenching his fists, his knuckles turned white with rage. One thought consumed him. I am no longer my father's prisoner, but the master of my own destiny. Fiery battles were ready to erupt. The Cyclopes, great craftsmen who had suffered under Cronus's rule, forged a weapon of unparalleled power for Poseidon, the Trident. When Poseidon took the Trident, he felt a resonance unlike anything before, as if the weapon and his soul were connected. This is your instrument of fate, whispered one of the Cyclopes, Briareus, his voice like thunder. It carries the will of the sea and contains the power of destruction. Use it to break your chains and reclaim the world that belongs to you. Poseidon grasped the trident, the cold touch of the metal causing his hand to tremble slightly. But his heart remained unwavering. He brandished it, and the air rang with the sound of howling winds, as if the sea itself were cheering him on. A grim smile touched his lips. Cronus, your time is up. The battle horns blared, and the world plunged into unprecedented chaos. Cronus summoned his army of Titans, while Poseidon, Zeus, and Hades led the liberated Olympian gods in their defiance. It was not just a war, but a clash of destinies, a battle between the old order and a new world. On the battlefield, Poseidon's trident gleamed with a cold brilliance. Each time he brandished it, the ocean roared from the horizon like an enraged beast, tearing apart and devouring the Titan's forces. Its roar echoed across the battlefield, unstoppable as a tsunami. He fought not just for revenge. Poseidon knew that only by overthrowing Cronus could he obtain a future that truly belonged to him. Each attack was filled with power and determination, and each defense demonstrated his wisdom and composure. Amidst the chaos, he was not only a fearless warrior, but also a cunning commander. However, the battle was not without its trials. Faced with the wrath of the Titans and the oppressive power of his father, Poseidon felt fear. Cronus's fearsome face radiated immense authority and cruelty, and his every roar shook the earth. "Do you think you can defeat me?" Cronus's voice thundered like thunder. "I am the embodiment of time, and time will never bow down." For a moment, Poseidon's heart faltered. He clutched the trident tightly, feeling its cold touch as if reminding him that he was no longer that helpless child. He took a deep breath, his gaze hardening. Time may not yield, but fate will choose a new ruler. The Titanomachy raged for countless days and nights. Poseidon fought side by side with his brothers. They fell and rose again and again. Eventually, Zeus's thunder split the sky. Hades' shadow consumed fear, and Poseidon's trident unleashed a cataclysmic tsunami that completely annihilated Cronus's army. When Cronus was imprisoned in the abyss, Poseidon stood quietly in the center of the battlefield. His body was covered in wounds, and the trident in his hand dripped with seawater and blood. He looked at the distant ocean, feeling an unfamiliar sense of freedom. He realized that this battle had not only changed the world, but had also transformed him. He was no longer an imprisoned child, but had become the master of the sea, the creator of fate. After the war, Cronus was sealed, and the era of Olympus began. Victory did not bring complete celebration. The three brothers faced a new challenge: how to divide dominion over the world. Ambition burned in their eyes, tempered by caution towards each other. It was time to draw lots. Zeus's fingers gently swirled the lot container, and Poseidon watched intently, a complex mixture of emotions stirring in his soul. He craved the vast land and sea, the boundless waters that called to his power. But in the end, fate decided his destiny. The sea, Poseidon accepted his fate, feeling both reluctance and quiet anticipation. He ascended the throne of the god of the sea, and as he wielded the trident, the ocean roared. He could feel the pulse of the waves resonating with the life of the sea. Deep in the ocean, he built a magnificent palace, the palace of the sea god, surrounded by corals, pearls, and strange sea creatures. His gaze did not stop at the ocean. He knew that the reach of the seas could extend to land, connecting with mountains and rivers. His power would not be limited by boundaries. Ruling the sea was not an easy task. Although Poseidon possessed immense power, his heart was not always at peace. He often stood on the waves, looking at the distant land, pondering his destiny. He was proud of his lot, but felt a slight regret that he did not rule the heavens or the underworld. He respected Zeus's rule, but harbored a hidden envy. He often asked, "Where do the boundaries of the ocean lie? How far can my rule extend?" As the era of Cronus was overthrown, and the new order of Olympus began to take shape, the three brothers, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, occupied the top of the power hierarchy. However, as soon as the distribution of power was completed, the outward unity could not hide the underlying tension. Zeus's position was as solid as a rock, his lightning bolts symbolizing supreme power. Poseidon, who ruled the vast oceans, always felt like a secondary character, forever overshadowed by the brilliance of his younger brother. Poseidon was not a god content with mediocrity. He ruled the boundless seas, where turbulent waves and bottomless depths were his domain. Each time he looked at the top of Olympus, a feeling of discontent gnawed at him. He knew perfectly well that despite the endless expanse of the ocean, he was always considered subordinate to the sky. Meanwhile, Zeus, with his lightning bolts and wisdom, easily won the awe and devotion of the gods. Why? Poseidon often whispered to himself, standing on the swaying sea, his trident glinting in the sun. There was a complex mixture of emotions in his eyes. I am not a coward. I shed blood for this new order and fought side by side with Zeus. Why do they remember his thunder but ignore my waves? The sea god did not envy Zeus's power, but longed to be treated as an equal. His power was enough to cause earthquakes and tsunamis capable of shaking the very earth. He believed that compared to Zeus, he simply lacked the opportunity to prove his worth. Poseidon's position was diminished not only by Zeus's dominance, but also by his own personality. Zeus was famous for his decisiveness and domineering nature, his ability to control the situation, making the gods hesitate before opposing him. Poseidon, on the other hand, despite being endowed with immense power, was stubborn and not skilled in diplomacy. His moods, like the ocean, were unpredictable, sometimes calm as a mirror, sometimes as fierce as a raging storm. This nature made him somewhat isolated in the divine world, although he never gave up the pursuit of recognition. At a grandiose feast on Olympus, Zeus sat high on his throne, holding a scepter symbolizing power, surrounded by adoring gazes of the gods. Meanwhile, Poseidon sat aside, holding his golden cup but unable to hide the cold in his heart. He glanced at Zeus, a slight, almost imperceptible smile touching the corner of his lips. Supreme God King, do you really control everything? The rivalry between Poseidon and Zeus concerned not only power, but also relationships and feelings. It was well known that Zeus was a lover of pleasure, often falling into a web of love and infatuation. However, Poseidon demonstrated a unique style in this area, becoming a kind of artist on Olympus. One day, Zeus was captivated by a beautiful mortal princess, while Zeus was planning how to win her heart with his thunderous power. Poseidon overtook him, using the romance of the sea and his divine grandeur. Poseidon won the princess's favor. It is said that this victory caused Zeus to unleash several lightning bolts in a fit of rage, provoking a violent storm. Meanwhile, Poseidon, comfortably ensconced in his underwater palace, remained serene as if nothing had happened. My waves may not shine as brightly as your thunder, but they can gently and constantly erode the tops of your mountains, Poseidon once told Zeus in private, his tone a mixture of pride and defiance. Poseidon was not a simple rival. He knew that he could never take Zeus's throne, but he had his own pride and wisdom. He ruled the oceans, not only protecting fishermen and sailors, but also showing mercy and strength as a god. In times of disaster, his trident was not just a weapon, but a symbol. The ocean is deep and unfathomable, as are Poseidon's wisdom and patience. Perhaps he would never be able to stand on the top of Olympus like Zeus, but he had already proven his worth in his own sphere. Every time the waves crashed against the rocks and the sea winds swept across the land, it was the best evidence of Poseidon's power and presence. Although the competition never ceased, when the time came, Poseidon and Zeus always stood together, whether facing the threat of giants or a rebellion from the underworld. They trusted each other and fought side by side. After one great battle, Zeus said to Poseidon, "Brother, my thunder cannot exist without your waves. Without you, I cannot truly control this world." Poseidon was silent for a moment, raised his trident, and gently touched Zeus's shoulder. He did not reply, but the complex light in his eyes said it all. There might be competition between brothers, but there was also an unbreakable bond. In the depths of the boundless ocean, Poseidon's palace shines like a dream, with walls inlaid with pearls, domes adorned with corals, and lamps made of sea crystal emitting a blue light, creating a unique and mysterious beauty. However, despite ruling the entire ocean, Poseidon feels a slight loneliness. The vast sea is boundless, but without anyone to share its beauty, it seems empty and desolate. Poseidon first saw Amphitrite in the center of a coral reef. She was one of the countless sea nymphs, moving gracefully like dolphins leaping through the waves. Her laughter was as clear as the sea breeze caressing shells. She danced on the surface of the sea with her sisters, her long blue-green hair flowing like water, her gaze gentle and lively. Poseidon's gaze was completely captured by her, and his trident unconsciously lowered. A feeling he had never experienced before awoke in him, and he knew he had to make her his queen. However, Amphitrite did not immediately accept his courtship. As the ruler of the seas, Poseidon was undoubtedly powerful, but Amphitrite worried whether his hot temper and ambitions would make the relationship stable. But Poseidon did not give up. He ordered dolphins to turn into messengers to present Amphitrite with the most precious treasures of the ocean. Rare pearls shining with iridescent colors, coral flutes producing musical sounds, and garlands of sea crystals symbolizing eternal love. In the end, Amphitrite was moved by his sincerity and persistence and agreed to become his wife. After the wedding, the love of Poseidon and Amphitrite grew, and the underwater kingdom flourished. One calm night, Amphitrite gave birth to their son Triton. The young prince immediately showed an extraordinary aura. He inherited the handsome appearance of his father Poseidon, with sapphire blue eyes like the purest crystals of the ocean depths. From his mother, he inherited elegance and tenderness, which made him a favorite of the sea people from a young age. As Triton grew, he not only showed the same power and strength as his father Poseidon, but also revealed the amusing legacy of the sea god. Triton, like his father, was obsessed with his appearance, always striving to make his scales perfectly shining, even participating in competitions in the depths of the sea to see whose hairstyle moved most elegantly with the waves. However, Triton had another inheritance, a love for beautiful women. He often swam between underwater villages and coral reefs, courting mermaids, princesses, and even coral spirits. Every time he appeared, it was like a grand performance with his dazzling smile and graceful movements, winning the hearts of many. Once, he gifted a deep-sea gemstone to a mermaid and promised her that she could summon him for protection at any time, which made Poseidon sigh helplessly. This boy knows how to charm people, even better than I did in my youth. Triton's name, reminiscent of Triton from Disney's The Little Mermaid, has led to many misconceptions in later legends. In fact, although Triton was the son of Poseidon, he did not focus on ruling the mermaid kingdom like King Triton. He was more like a young adventurer of the sea, loving adventures and exploration, and often challenging the rules set by his father. Nevertheless, he remained devoted to his family and duties, always stepping forward to fight when the ocean was threatened, protecting his people without hesitation. Watching Triton grow, Poseidon experienced pride and mixed feelings. He was proud of his son's talent and charm, but also worried that his recklessness might cause him to miss out on true love and responsibility. One day, he said to Amphitrite in private, "Triton's charm surpasses mine when I was young, but will he understand that the true meaning of strength and charm lies in protecting, not conquering?" Amphitrite smiled and comforted him. "He is our son. He will find his way. Don't forget, you both were once the most willful wave in this sea." Poseidon laughed lightly, raised his trident, and pointed to the distant horizon. "Perhaps, but I hope there will be fewer storms in his journey." Triton's story continues to be passed down through the ocean, his adventures and romances becoming popular topics among the sea people. Meanwhile, Poseidon and Amphitrite continue to protect their underwater kingdom, awaiting the day when their son, embraced by the waves, grows into a true heir to the throne of the sea gods. In the family of gods, Poseidon is known as the ruler of the oceans, but his complex and multifaceted nature is fully revealed in his relationships with other deities. His story with his second sister, Demeter, in particular, is full of not only turbulent pursuits, but also gives rise to a touching legend of creation and reconciliation. As a reminder, we previously mentioned Zeus's tumultuous romantic stories, including his second sister Demeter, who was also once his wife. Poseidon's passionate infatuation with Demeter began a long time ago. He was deeply fascinated by the calmness and elegance of the goddess of agriculture and harvest. Demeter's presence was like the earth itself, stable but full of vitality. Her gaze was as warm and unapproachable as sunlight on a field. However, Poseidon's love carried the wildness and untamed nature of the sea, which made Demeter feel confused and even uneasy. She was fully aware of her brother's character, passionate, insistent, but also uncontrollable. His courtship of women was often reckless, and this strong affection seemed to Demeter like a raging wave, full of danger. In an attempt to escape Poseidon's pursuit, Demeter used her divine powers to transform into a graceful mare and mingle with a herd of horses, hoping to avoid his gaze. However, Poseidon was not one to give up easily. He sensed Demeter's disguise and decided to continue the chase in her form. He transformed into a stallion, his mane flowing like waves, his hooves pounding the ground like thunder. He pursued the mare Demeter through vast meadows and gentle hills until he finally cornered her in a quiet forest. When Demeter was forced to reveal herself, she scolded Poseidon in anger. "Do you know that your mad chase will only push me further away? You do not understand what respect and restraint are." Poseidon lowered his head for a moment, and complex emotions flashed in his eyes. Perhaps he had not realized that his love made her feel oppressed. Despite this, his stubbornness and passion led to an unexpected result for them both. In the end, Demeter could not escape Poseidon's pursuit, and their union gave birth to an extraordinary offspring, Arion, the divine horse. The birth of Arion was astonishing. He was sleek and coal-black, with a mane that shone like stars in the night. Wherever his hooves touched the earth, lush plants arose. He inherited the strength and wisdom of his parents, becoming the fastest and most powerful horse in Greek mythology, a proud symbol for both gods and heroes. However, the birth of Arion did not fully reconcile Demeter with Poseidon. She still resented his recklessness, but over time she began to see another side of his nature, the talent of a creator. In an effort to earn Demeter's forgiveness, Poseidon decided to create a gift that she could be proud of. He used the powers of both the sea and the land and created the first horse in the world. This horse was graceful, powerful, with a mane like waves and hooves as strong as rocks. Poseidon presented it to Demeter and said, "This horse is my gift to you. It symbolizes the strength of the land and the freedom of the sea. Let it be a companion to humanity, helping them plow the fields and cross the mountains." Demeter looked at the horse in silence for a moment. She realized that Poseidon's gift was not just a way to please her, but a deep expression of repentance and sincere devotion. In the end, she accepted the gift. The story of Poseidon and Demeter began with conflict, but ended with creation and reconciliation. Arion and the first horse became symbols of their relationship, one representing the bond between gods, the other representing a divine gift to humanity. For Poseidon, this experience was a turning point. He began to understand that love is not just about pursuit, but also about respect and patience. His creativity was seen by more people, and he was no longer just a destroyer of oceans and earthquakes, but a giver of life. Demeter continued to protect the fertility of the earth, while Poseidon reflected on this experience from his throne in the ocean. His gaze crossed the waves and looked at the distant fields, as if still feeling the strength and warmth of Demeter. And in the wind echoed the neighing of Arion, as if carrying the eternal message that even when storms and earth oppose each other, love and creation can lead to their fusion. Poseidon, the lord of the seas and master of the Trident, possessed boundless power. He once believed that he had conquered all difficulties and achieved well-deserved glory. However, the divine realm was not governed solely by the dominion of storms and waves, especially when he faced Athena. This battle for power became more complex and dramatic than he could ever have imagined. One day, Poseidon stood on the shores of Athens, gazing at the city he had never fully controlled. It lay on ancient Greek soil, full of history and boundless beauty. The city was a symbol of wisdom, the soul of the urban world. Poseidon's heart filled with longing, a desire to bring this city into his possession, to make it a sacred place protected by the god of the sea. In the opposite direction, Athena, the embodiment of wisdom and reason, coldly observed the city. Her gaze was not as crude or direct as Poseidon's. It radiated deep thought and intellect. Thus, the two gods made a deal. Whoever could bring the people of Athens the most precious gift would gain patronage over the city. Poseidon was confident, already imagining himself standing on the walls of Athens, basking in the glory of dominion over the land. He raised his trident, and in an instant the waves surged, and the tide surged like a roaring beast. After a mighty roar, Poseidon plunged his trident into the ground, and its power pierced the depths of the sea, tearing the earth and shaking the city. Soon after, a giant horse leaped out of the sea, galloping on the outskirts of the city, symbolizing Poseidon's power and grandeur. He brought Athens the first horse, a creature not only magical, but also a symbol of strength, speed, and conquest. Poseidon's heart filled with confidence, believing that no gift could move the Athenians more than this. After all, he offered them power and freedom. However, Athena was not a god to be easily defeated. She stood quietly at a distance, observing Poseidon's actions. She was in no hurry to act, her eyes shining with a deep light. She understood that wisdom, not just strength, would ensure long-term survival in this world. Therefore, she began to think about how she could win the bet. She lowered her head, and an ingenious idea arose in her mind. Athena's wisdom was not limited to war and strategy, but also extended to her deep understanding of nature. She approached a bare rock, gently placing her palm on it. With her touch, an olive tree began to grow, quiet, its trunk strong, and its branches abundant, radiating a gentle and enduring strength. This tree was her gift, symbolizing peace, prosperity, and the power of wisdom. It not only provided food and timber, but also brought hope and wealth, a symbol of the future prosperity of Athens. As Poseidon and Athena presented their gifts to the people of Athens, a deep silence spread. The people admired the great power that Poseidon had brought, in awe of the speed and magnificence of the horse. But they were also deeply drawn to Athena's olive tree. It was not just a tree. It represented a far-reaching influence. It symbolized long-term prosperity and wisdom, a promise of sustenance for the future. The people of Athens knew that they did not fully depend on strength for survival, but needed wisdom and resources to achieve long-term happiness and growth. Poseidon's anger intensified as he saw Athena triumph. His gaze sharpened, and his trident nearly slipped from his hands. Rage crashed over him like a tidal wave, and he could not understand why a tree could be more significant than the strength and power of the horse he had brought. But he also knew that the battle was now beyond return. Athena's wisdom ultimately triumphed over the fleeting nature of strength. Poseidon felt an unprecedented sense of loss. Although his heart was filled with anger and disappointment, he was forced to accept the outcome. He never doubted his own strength, but now he realized that simple strength was not enough to win patronage over a city. His heart was filled with a complex mixture of feelings: respect for Athena, disappointment in his own failure. Poseidon's internal turmoil was deep. He knew that he could easily destroy Athens, but he also understood that the future of the city could not be sustained through violence and force, as Athena had demonstrated. Wisdom and foresight were the true pillars for the long term. In the end, Poseidon fell silent and accepted his defeat. Among the gods, victory was not always determined by strength, but by wisdom and long-term vision. Poseidon quietly withdrew his power. Looking at Athena's gentle but resolute face, he took a deep breath, and the fire of his anger slowly subsided. Although he did not gain patronage over Athens, Poseidon did not give up easily. He knew that he was still the lord of the seas, possessing incomparable power, and Athena's victory gave him new understanding. Poseidon, the mighty god of the seas, though a symbol of power, often experienced inexplicable loneliness and frustration among the Olympian gods. This was especially true after his defeat in the contest for patronage over Athens, a setback that not only humiliated him, but also awakened deep anger and jealousy in his heart. The contest for Athens ended in Poseidon's defeat, and the beloved the steed he created had been returned. His eyes glimmered with unshed tears, reflecting his bitterness and anger. After all, he had invested so much effort into the contest, only to lose to Athena's wisdom and foresight. Though Poseidon outwardly suppressed his rage within, he seethed like a turbulent torrent in the sea, impossible to calm. It is said that Poseidon could not come to terms with this defeat, and the anger he harbored only grew with time. Then, in a fit of impulsive rage, Poseidon made a decision that would become the talk of the gods. One day, while visiting Athena's temple, his anger could no longer be contained. He turned his desire to Medusa, an extraordinarily beautiful woman who had once stirred his heart. However, Medusa never submitted to him, and this unfulfilled desire tormented Poseidon's pride like a sharp blade in the temple. Consumed by anger and impulsiveness, Poseidon shamelessly defiled Medusa. This act of disrespect infuriated Athena, who was well aware that Medusa had once been a priestess of her temple. Poseidon's behavior was a clear provocation. In her fury, Athena made a terrible decision. She transformed Medusa's beauty into something monstrous. Her once beautiful hair turned into snakes, and the light in her eyes became the light of eternal sorrow and rage. Medusa became the terrifying Gorgon, whose gaze could turn anyone to stone. Though Poseidon's anger subsided temporarily, it brought new chaos to the divine realm. Despite this, Poseidon was not merely a god of impulse and brute force. In another contest, he showed his rational side. We will return to Medusa's story in the future, but for now, let's move on. Poseidon was certainly a god of strong emotions, but he was not simply a crude god relying solely on strength. For example, at the Colline festival, Poseidon engaged in a fierce dispute with Apollo. The festival, meant to bring glory and blessings to the gods, became a center of contention when Apollo attempted to seize control, claiming that only his music could bring favor from the gods. However, Poseidon, wielding the power of the sea, held Apollo's actions in contempt. He understood that the strength of the sea lay not only in storms and waves, but also in profound wisdom and enduring sources of life. After a heated exchange, Poseidon did not resort to using his trident to overpower Apollo. Instead, he engaged in a battle of wits, parrying Apollo's arguments with his own clever reasoning. In the end, Poseidon emerged victorious, successfully securing the position of chief god at the Colline festival. In this contest, Poseidon demonstrated his hidden wisdom, proving that he was not merely a god of brute force and rage, but also capable of prevailing through intellect and complex situations. However, competition among the gods never ceased. Despite Poseidon's occasional disappointment at losing in some contests, he understood that in the face of more serious crises, unity among the gods was essential. A prime example of this was the Gigantomachy, the great war with Typhon. Typhon, a giant embodying storms, possessed thunderous power and nearly destroyed all of Olympus. Even mighty gods like Apollo and Artemis could not withstand him, and many gods fled, hiding far away. Poseidon did not back down, despite the formidable foe before him. He stood tall, using his unparalleled power over the sea to fight Typhon in a fierce, prolonged duel. Poseidon's courage and unwavering spirit in battle were inspiring. His trident and the waves surged like torrents against Typhon, and the clash of the sea's power and the thunder of the storm shook the heavens. Despite Poseidon's valiant efforts, he could not overcome Typhon's endless supply of thunder. When Poseidon was finally defeated, close to death, Athena arrived in time to take his place and continue the fight for the survival of the gods. Although Poseidon ultimately failed to defeat Typhon, he still displayed extraordinary courage and strength in this battle. He may not have achieved final victory, but his determination and bravery will forever be etched in the history of Olympus. After the battle, Poseidon was not only seen as a mighty god of the sea, but also as a deity of sacrifice and responsibility. In ancient times, Poseidon's reputation spread across the land, known for both his immense power and his complex, vengeful nature. Many city-states and nations sought his protection, and Troy, once a magnificent city, was no exception. Once, Poseidon shared a deep alliance with King Laomedon of Troy. Poseidon helped the Trojans build an impregnable wall, a towering and majestic structure then praised as an unbreakable defense, almost impossible to breach. Poseidon invested himself in the project with confidence, his strength flowing into every stone as if it carried his blessing and hope for Troy. He felt his power build with the height of the walls, pride and might filling him. Gazing upon the walls he had created, Poseidon could not help but feel a deep desire to protect Troy. After all, the city symbolized beauty and glory worthy of his patronage. However, the royal family of Troy, especially King Laomedon, did not seem to fully grasp Poseidon's actions. Despite his role in building the walls, Poseidon never received the reward he felt he deserved. According to the custom between gods and mortals, such monumental wall-building efforts should have been accompanied by a grand festival and generous offerings. But Laomedon, perhaps overly confident or distracted by other political considerations, overlooked the need to honor Poseidon's contributions. This betrayal took deep root in Poseidon's heart, igniting a rage and resentment that simmered beneath the surface. Though he remained silent at the time, the fire of anger never ceased to burn within him. As time passed, the Trojan War began, pitting the Greek alliance against Troy in a battle of life and death. The war was filled with bloodshed and heroism. Warriors clashed on the battlefield, and the names of heroes were immortalized through generations. But behind the scenes, it was the power of the gods that determined the fate of the conflict, and in that moment, Poseidon found an opportunity for revenge. As the flames of war engulfed Troy, Poseidon felt the fury of his betrayal rise again. The Trojans seemed unaware that their former ally now stood against them. Poseidon decided to personally destroy the very defenses he had helped build. It was not just revenge, it was a lesson to the Trojans that betraying the gods would bring a terrible price. Standing deep in the sea, Poseidon gripped his trident, feeling the power of the waves and the tremor of the earth. Each time he brandished the trident, the ocean roared like a beast, and the earth shook with fury. Poseidon let out a furious cry, and the power he unleashed caused a massive tsunami and earthquake, shaking the entire city of Troy. The walls began to sway and crack as if the heavens themselves were lamenting the disaster. The once invincible walls, now facing Poseidon's wrath, collapsed in an instant. The Trojans fled in panic, their once secure defenses now a deadly trap. The earth cracked open, swallowing streets, and Poseidon's rage plunged the city into terror and chaos. Watching the fall of the walls he had created, Poseidon felt a strange sense of satisfaction, but it was bittersweet. Each fallen stone was an act of revenge for betrayal, and each roar of the waves was a declaration of his anger and ruthlessness. Poseidon watched the destruction calmly, his heart in turmoil. His revenge was swift and brutal, but within him lingered an empty void. Perhaps he had never truly considered whether the victory of revenge could heal the wound of betrayal. He had once poured his heart into the city, but now all that effort had turned into a force of destruction. He knew that he had not only destroyed the walls, but also the hopes and dreams he had once held for Troy. Despite this, the brief satisfaction of revenge gave Poseidon a fleeting sense of solace. Seeing the once invincible Troy crumble under his wrath, Poseidon realized that his anger was not in vain. It carried a profound meaning. It was a reminder of the dignity of the gods and a punishment for those who dared to betray them. But Poseidon was not content with this alone. His heart still could not forget the betrayal, the cold gaze of King Laomedon. At that moment, Poseidon realized that revenge was not an end, but a process that continued to fester and intensify. His anger would never be quenched until those who had betrayed the gods paid their price. Poseidon, lord of the sea, was filled with boundless power and an imposing presence. But he was often torn between anger and reason. His heart held both love and care, as well as unquenchable rage. Poseidon's revenge against Troy was not just a simple act of retribution. It symbolized the eternal conflict between gods and mortals, between respect and betrayal. And in that moment, Poseidon revealed the depth of his complex nature, a god capable of both creation and destruction. Poseidon, one of the three brothers, ruler of the oceans and wielder of the Trident. His name is legendary in ancient Greek mythology, carrying with it the power of storms and the sea. He is a god of direct emotions and a fiery temperament, rarely concealing his inner world. In his anger, sea monsters appear, waves rage, and everything is consumed. He also has another side, gentle and loving, protecting the people who rely on the sea, guarding coastal cities and ships on long voyages. Poseidon's image evokes both fear and respect. Poseidon's anger is like a sharp, penetrating gaze, capable of igniting the very heavens and earth. When he is angry, the sea rages, the sky darkens, and sea monsters rise from the depths, grasping and raging. Poseidon grips his trident, and with a powerful thrust, waves crash like mountains, flooding everything in their path. Every wave of his trident triggers a storm. The entire ocean seems to rise and fall under his control. Thunder roars, and the heavens resonate with the sound of relentless rage. Even more terrifying, when Poseidon shakes his trident furiously, the earth trembles, mountains crack, rivers rage, and the ocean floor opens, releasing a terrible roar. The shaking of the earth seems to be the rage of the ocean, overflowing onto the land. He is known as the god of storms and the earth shaker, titles that encompass the awe and terror that his power inspires. Poseidon's rage is never without reason. It is rooted in his insistence on maintaining order as part of his divine nature. When he sees people struggling for survival at sea, he does not hesitate to use his trident, destroying those who seek to disrupt the natural balance. However, Poseidon is not just an angry god. Deep within him is a gentler side, one that cares for those who live in harmony with the sea. His kindness and compassion are most evident in his protection of coastal dwellers. He does not like to create disasters without reason. On the contrary, he prefers to protect those who revere him with open arms. Poseidon loves the coast, cherishes every fisherman who struggles with the seas, and he watches over fishing villages and coastal cities. Every time the sea is calm, Poseidon turns into a gentle touch, caressing the faces of people and offering solace. Poseidon's divine power has brought prosperity and peace to the cities that depend on the sea. For example, the cities of Philos and Dibys, located in the Aegean Sea, are under his protection. The mythical Atlantis also revered him as their chief god. Poseidon used his trident to calm storms, bringing abundant harvests and peace. Sailors praying for Poseidon's protection find safe passage across the vast ocean, protected from harsh weather. Poseidon's kindness extends beyond protection. He is also known for his creativity. To win the favor of Demeter, he created the first horse. This horse not only became the basis for human transport, but also symbolized the development of equestrian sports and agriculture. People relied on it to plow the fields, bringing abundant harvests. Poseidon's creativity did not stop there. With a wave of his trident, he could conjure fresh springs from the cracks in the earth, nourishing the land and bringing fertile soil for agriculture. Poseidon is not just a god of the sea. His divinity encompasses both the ocean and the land. His power controls not only the storms of the sea, but also brings hope for abundance on land. Therefore, he is also revered as a god of abundance. Poseidon's image is often found in ancient works of art. In almost every sculpture or painting, he is depicted riding a golden chariot drawn by white horses, with a majestic presence that seems to engulf the very air. His strength is immense, and his presence is commanding. When people see the shining trident, they know that it is the symbol of Poseidon, ruler of the seas, chief of storms. His towering figure, commanding voice, and deep connection to both the ocean and horses make him one of the most recognizable gods in mythology. Despite Poseidon's immense power, capable of controlling both the ocean and the land, he still has a brother who shines even brighter, Zeus. Zeus wields thunder as his weapon and rules the heavens, while Poseidon never received the title of king of the gods. This division sometimes awakens complex emotions in Poseidon, both reverence for Zeus and a subtle jealousy. He is the most straightforward of the three brothers, never hiding his feelings. No matter how turbulent his emotions, he reveals them to the world. Poseidon is both ruler of storms and the ocean, and a god of harvest and protection. His power is unparalleled, but he is filled with complex emotions. His story is not just a legend in mythology, but a symbol of the deep connection between humanity and the forces of nature. In Poseidon's world, oceans rage and calm, storms and tenderness intertwine. Regardless of how grand his presence is, his deep love for the sea, the land, and all living beings remains constant. Compared to the grandeur of Zeus, Poseidon seems more approachable, with a more human touch. His image not only evokes sympathy in people, but also endows the sea with a mysterious attraction. When we think of the sea, the first deity that comes to mind remains Poseidon. Whether in ancient myths or modern pop culture, Poseidon continues to occupy a central place. In fact, in DC movies, the character of Mercury can be seen as a modern portrayal of Poseidon, with a role encompassing both the ocean and the sky, matching P. Poseidon as the god of the sea. Poseidon's influence on subsequent cultures is profound and widespread. For example, the mysterious and distant planet Neptune in astronomy is named after the Roman god of the sea, Neptune, and its symbol, the mighty Trident, is the same as Poseidon's weapon, symbolizing the infinite power and depths of the ocean. Even the Italian luxury car brand Maserati has a trident in its logo, a symbol of Poseidon, conveying the brand's strength and noble character, as if one can feel the boundlessness of the sea and its invincible aura. Poseidon is more than just a sea god in ancient mythology. His image has transcended time and space, deeply rooted in modern culture and serving as an indelible symbol in people's hearts. If you like Greek mythology, Leave a comment and let me know which character or myth you like the most. Of course, since you are already asleep, no comment is the best comment. Thank you for listening, and good night with sweet dreams, my sleepy tiger. The wrath of Poseidon, left after the destruction of Troy, did not subside, like an eternal storm in his soul. Revenge, so desired and so devastating, brought only fleeting satisfaction, followed by a deep, gnawing emptiness. He, the great lord of the seas, who helped build impregnable walls, now saw them turn to dust under the blows of his own trident. It was not just the destruction of a city, it was the destruction of a part of himself, a symbol of his trust, turned into bitter betrayal. Laomedon, the king who dared to deceive a god, paid a high price, but the price itself left Poseidon with an unhealed wound. His rage, once directed at a specific target, was now a pointless raging torrent that threatened to engulf not only mortals, but also gods. The consequences of his actions continued to echo in the world. Mortal cities, coastal settlements, whose lives depended on the mercy of the sea, now lived in fear of their former protector. Sailors, who previously prayed to him for safe passage, now watched with trepidation every change in the ocean's mood, fearing that any wave might be a harbinger of his wrath. Cities that prided themselves on his patronage now felt abandoned, their hopes and dreams, invested in the walls he built, destroyed along with them. But it wasn't just their suffering. Even the gods on Olympus felt the tremor of the earth shaken by his unyielding rage. Zeus, his brother, often tried to reason with him, reminding him of the need to maintain balance and order. But Zeus's words seemed only to fuel the flames of Poseidon's anger. He tried to find peace, sought it in the silence of the underwater depths, in the vast expanse of the ocean. But even there, among the coral gardens and shining pearls, he was haunted by the shadows of the past. He saw the faces of the Trojans, their fear, their despair, and felt the weight of his power, which could so easily bring both life and death. His divine nature demanded order, but his mortal emotions, anger, resentment, disappointment, constantly undermined that need. As a god whose power manifested in raging waves and earthquakes, he was made for action, for demonstrating his might. But now that very power had become his curse, preventing him from finding peace. He pondered how the simple neglect of a mortal king could lead to such a devastating consequence. Was it merely a loss of respect, or something deeper, a realization that his divine origin and his role in the mortal world were being questioned? His pride, his divine dignity, had been wounded, and that wound seemed never to heal. He saw how Athena, with her wisdom and composure, governed her city, bringing prosperity through creation, not destruction. This comparison only amplified his own sense of failure. In moments of despair, he could feel his power turning against himself, as if the ocean, his faithful companion, was also tired of his anger. The waves that had once served him now seemed mocking, reflecting his own internal turmoil. He wondered if he could ever find true peace, if he could ever forgive himself for his actions. His divine existence now seemed a curse, doomed to eternal wandering between power and regret. He was a god who gave life, but also a god who took it away on a scale that astonished even the gods themselves. And in this duality, in this eternal conflict between his essence and his emotions, lay his deepest and most terrible secret, a secret that he might never be able to reveal even to himself. His attempts to find peace were like trying to hold the ocean in his palms, endless, futile, and filled with the bitter truth about his own nature. He remained the god of the sea, but the sea within him raged, finding no outlet, doomed to forever remember the destroyed Troy and his own unquenchable anger, which continued to define his destiny. His relationships with his sisters, Hestia and Demeter, also had their complex history, going beyond simple family affection. Although he rarely showed his feelings openly, especially to Hestia, the guardian of the hearth, his connection with her was deep and respectful. Hestia, the personification of purity and stability, was for him a kind of anchor in a world where storms and passions reigned. Her calmness and wisdom often served as a counterweight to his own unbridled nature. When Olympus faced crises and other gods were gripped by panic, it was Hestia's composure, her unwavering faith in order, that often served as a reminder that true strength could manifest not only in power, but also in resilience. Poseidon, whose own power was so closely linked to the natural elements, found in her a quiet but powerful reflection of the more fundamental forces of being. With Demeter, the goddess of fertility and harvest, his relationship was far more turbulent. As we have already seen, their passion, born of pursuit and unbridled desire, led to the birth of Arion, a wondrous horse, a symbol of their complex connection. But even after this event, despite the creation of the first horse, their relationship remained strained. Demeter, hurt by his recklessness, never completely forgot his courtship, which she perceived as an invasion of her personal space. At the same time, Poseidon, sensing in her something deeper than just an object of desire, a symbol of life, earth, permanence, began to understand that true strength lies not only in conquest, but also in respect. Their joint creation, Arion, became a bridge between their worlds, reminding them both that even from the most turbulent passions, something beautiful and valuable can be born. But were these relationships just familial? When Poseidon looked at Hestia, did he see only a sister, or did something else awaken in his heart, something that he himself was afraid to admit? Were his attempts to appease Demeter only an attempt to make amends, or did they conceal another, deeper attraction to the earth that she personified? In Greek mythology, the lines between relationships were often thin, and even the gods were subject to complex emotions that could intertwine in the most unexpected ways. Perhaps his need for protection and care shown to them was not only brotherly love, but also a reflection of his own vulnerability, his desire to find support in a world where his own strength was as destructive as it was creative. In times of crisis, when Olympus was threatened, Poseidon often found unexpected allies in his sisters. His power, capable of causing earthquakes and tsunamis, could be directed at defense when needed. And in those moments, when the world stood on the brink of the abyss, his strength, combined with the wisdom of Athena or the resilience of Demeter, became invincible. These alliances, born of necessity, often revealed new facets of his character, demonstrating that even the most turbulent god is capable of loyalty and cooperation. He could be a storm, but he could also be a shield. And these secrets of his divine relationships, his hidden motives and unexpected alliances, only underscored his complex and multifaceted nature, making him one of the most intriguing characters in the pantheon of Olympians. The cults of Poseidon, like his image, spread far beyond Greece, taking on new forms and meanings in different cultures. In Phoenician mythology, he was often identified with Baal, the god of storms and fertility, which emphasized his dual nature, the power of destruction and the ability to give life. In Roman tradition, he became Neptune, lord of the seas, whose features and attributes largely echoed the Greek god. Even in distant lands, where Greek myths penetrated through trade and conquest, his power and authority were reflected. Maritime peoples, whose lives depended on the whims of the ocean, saw in him not only a deity, but also something closer, a force they had to respect and tame. The mysteries of the underwater world, shrouded in darkness and mystery, continue to stir the imagination. Legends of hidden realms inhabited by sea peoples, such as Tritons and nymphs, who supposedly serve Poseidon, still live on in folklore. It is said that in the deepest recesses of the ocean, inaccessible to human eyes, there are cities built of pearls and corals where Poseidon reigns in his majestic palace. Artifacts associated with him, tridents adorned with precious stones, golden chariots drawn by seahorses, have become objects of search and dreams. These legends, passed down from generation to generation, hint that Poseidon's power extends far beyond what we can see or understand. Are there prophecies about his return or new incarnation? Some myths hint at the cyclical nature of divine power, that gods, like natural elements, can disappear only to reappear. Perhaps in our world, where the oceans continue to hold their secrets, the power of Poseidon has not disappeared completely, but has only changed its form. Maybe in every storm, in every tsunami, in every raging tide, there is an echo of his ancient power. And in our quest to understand nature, we may unconsciously turn to his legacy, seeking answers to eternal questions about power, chaos, and creation. His influence on culture is undeniable. From planet names to car logos, the image of the Trident, a symbol of Poseidon, has firmly entered our consciousness as a symbol of the power, inevitability, and beauty of the ocean. He remains not just a mythological character, but an archetype, an embodiment of the mighty forces of nature that both frighten and fascinate us. And perhaps it is in this duality, in this eternal dance between destruction and creation, between anger and love, that the true greatness of Poseidon lies. A god whose story continues to live in every breath of the ocean, in every wave crashing on the shore, in every heart that feels the call of the boundless waters. His legacy is not only myths, but the very fabric of our connection with nature, a reminder of the forces that transcend us, but that we must also respect and understand.